Russian strikes across multiple parts of Ukraine killed at least 10 people Thursday, hours after the U.S. and Ukraine signed a joint economic investment deal. The attacks come as U.S. officials voice cautious optimism on brokering a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was also serving as the interim national security advisor, said Thursday night there is still work to be done.
I think we know where Ukraine is and we know where Russia is right now and where Putin is. They're still far apart. They're closer, but they're still far apart. And it's going to take a real breakthrough here very soon to make this possible. Or I think the president is going to have to make a decision about how much more time we're going to dedicate to this.
CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata joins us now. Charlie, U.S. officials keep saying they need to see progress here, but looking back on the past week, was any made?
Honestly, Lindsay, there's been zero progress this week to report. And if we're going to call it the peace process between Ukraine and Russia, tonight, as you mentioned, more people will die on both sides of this fighting because the war is raging there. It's typical you see this kind of jockeying for some kind of advantage before an end of fight might be on the horizon. As you said, Secretary of State Marco Rubio had warned earlier, we discussed it, right? This would be a pivotal week for the U.S. and threatening to pull out of talks. And essentially that really has been happening. State Department saying that envoys would no longer fly around the world at the drop of a hat. And the United States, at the same time, the United States has signed that economic deal with Ukraine. And that is an important step forward. You and I have been discussing it. You know, Ukraine had hoped for security guarantees in exchange for access to Ukraine's resources, including some rare earth minerals. But it also doesn't demand that Ukraine reimburse the United States for the money it's already received. So it does pull both of those countries together. It sends a message to Russia about Ukraine and U.S. cooperation, including military cooperation, and it may help Ukraine to be more amenable to peace talks going forward. It also remains to be seen. You mentioned Marco Rubio there, the impact of what the loss of National Security Advisor Mike Waltz will have on the process.
Let's talk President Trump's budget proposal. We know it's not a binding document, but what is the White House proposing for defense spending?
You know, no huge surprises here because we had expected it, but it pushes the Pentagon budget to more than $1 trillion for the first time in history. And we float that money around. That's up from about $860 billion. But that means spending $2.7 billion a day, including Christmas. That's how much money we're talking about here. So the money the budget was skinny on details. It does mention some big ticket items, including the Golden Dome missile defense system to protect the United States from outside threats, bolstering more there's a question about that and how that's going to be implemented. Bolstering border security, expanding shipbuilding. That has been a long-running theme. That includes submarines, which the United States is way behind, we've reported here, and the funding and development of that shiny new F-47 fighter jet. It also includes a 3.8% raise for service members. But I have to add that it comes the day after Secretary Hegseth ordered the Army up to come up with new plans. That would see more investment in things like emerging technologies, like drones, electronic warfare, long-range missiles, and a pre-positioning of forces within the Indo-Pacific to defer the threat from China. So these things kind of go hand in hand. There were no big secrets revealed in the budget. Had to do with shipbuilding, had to do with missile defense, had to do with bolstering the border, had to do with repositioning forces around the Indo-Pacific, around the areas regarding China. But yes, a huge amount of money. When we're talking about these cutbacks and DOGE and everything else, not just in this building, but elsewhere throughout the country, but a big investment, a 13% boost in the budget here at the Pentagon.
$2.7 billion a day, including Christmas. Charlie D'Agata, thank you.